Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Happy 2024, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for tuning in to This Week in Agribusiness. I'm Mike Pearson in the studio today, and we're looking ahead to Washington getting back in business. Recently, I had the chance to talk with Kay Thatcher, the Director of Public Policy with Syngenta, and I asked her if a farm bill was in the works.
Well, one would really hope, but we kicked the can down the road earlier in just extending it till September 30th. And what that really means is we only have till probably May, because you're not going to pass a farm bill just a couple of months before the election. Too much political baggage there. So we only have a few months, and I think, we kicked the can down the road on appropriations. So you're going to have late January, early February. We're going to be in probably worse turmoil than what you saw recently. I think that we're going to have to resolve those. But when you're thinking about the Farm Bill, the whole SNAP food stamp program is a real problem, because you have lots of Republicans who want to make further cuts, further refinements to the program, and that is really the third rail for Democrats. And so that issue has to get resolved. We talk often, Mike, about the fact that the Farm Bill is very bipartisan, and it is, and it will have to be. But the most partisan issue is always the SNAP program, and it seems to be even more partisan this time than usual.
Yeah. We talk a lot about the Farm Bill, period. We talk a lot about legislative efforts with regard to agriculture, Mary Kay, but there are also executive agency actions with regard to agriculture. There are regulatory bodies in D.C. We've seen a lot of actions from those groups here over the past several years, EPA in particular. As you look out, what do you think farmers need to be watching on the regulatory side?
Well, it's a great question, Mike, because everybody wants to talk about the Farm Bill. And I could stand here and talk about it too for a long time. But the fact is, if you really want to know what's going to affect a farmer's pocketbook, it's the EPA and some of the regulations they're putting out. It's going to make a lot bigger impact. I don't know that I've ever seen a more problematic regulation than this herbicide regulation that they put out on endangered species. And, something that has to be done, because we have to work through the FFA that regulates pesticides with endangered species. But they want farmers to go out and do a lot of mitigation efforts before they even determine if there is an endangered species item. And 4 mitigations per farm. So you're talking about 40% reduction in pesticides, you're talking about cover crops, you're talking about buffer strips, and you're talking about crazy things. There's a provision in their rule that says a farmer would have to go to the local Fish and Wildlife Service 3 months before they put on a pesticide to ask for approval. Well, how do you know what pest is going to come 3 months early? We have got to get some common sense into this regulation, but we got to continue talking about it. Unfortunately, it's a really technical regulation. It's hard to talk about, but if you want to know what's going to affect the bottom line of a farmer, you got to watch those new regs out of EPA.
There's been a lot of complexity in international trade over the past several years. Of course, American ag is global. We need those global buyers to keep our markets where they are, and we're just not adding too many new ones. Bring us up to speed on what you'd like to see this administration or the next administration do to really help drive more ag internationally.
Well, we'd absolutely love to prioritize more free and fair trade agreements. This administration is just not interested in doing that, but the fact is, neither was former President Trump. So if you assume that Mr. Biden, Mr. Trump are the lead folks for the next administration, they're not going to be any more interested. So what's happening is we're not doing more free and fair trade agreements with other countries, but other countries around the world are going and finding our partners, and they are doing free trade agreements where they cut tariffs X%. And that just makes our products that more expensive in international markets, and it's going to cost us. So we have got to find a way to really bring down the hammer on this, regardless who the president is, and, again, talk about how important those free trade agreements are. It's great that we're out and we're solving sanitary and phytosanitary issues, but again, when people are going to look at the price of a commodity, they're going to go from the country that's cut a free trade agreement and can export it cheaper than we can.
Yes, those policy discussions will be heating up shortly. Our thanks to Kay Thatcher, the Director of Public Policy from Syngenta. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. And it might be a new year, new you, but it's the same commodity markets. Joining us this week, the first week of 2024, to break them down is Ted Seifert, Chief Market Strategist with Zaner Ag Hedge. Ted, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike.
Let's talk through this corn market. Ted, we've been on a slide here since midsummer. 2024 is underway. Does that slide continue?
Yeah, well, I mean, just to recap, it was a wild summer, right? I mean, we had 3 attempts at major weather rallies and 3 pretty large failures that have kind of extended into lower prices. We did not have that harvest low and post-harvest rally into the end of the calendar year, which is all very concerning. And it's really driven by the fact that we are talking about a 2+ billion bushel carryover in corn, which historically speaking does not support $5, $5.50, or even $4.50 for that matter, which is why we continue to just slowly erode. Unless we have a major weather issue in the second season corn crop in Brazil, which, by the way, the weather in Brazil looks like it's changing for the better, or if we have another major issue during our growing season, although again, what does that look like? Because after last year, it feels like, wow, we've got genetics that are really tough to kill at this point. So I don't know. You know, it's got to be a production issue from somewhere to really get us going. Otherwise, we need to see a new influx of demand that we're not seeing right now, and I don't know where that would come from. Yes, we can talk about sustainable aviation and things like that, but it's got to really hurry up and have a major impact for us to really see higher prices in the here and now.
That's a great point, Ted. Sustainable aviation fuel might be coming, but it's down the line.
Yeah.
Ethanol, though, is with us today. Is there any potential for a pop in ethanol demand?
You know, ethanol's been the bright spot of the corn balance sheet. Ethanol continues to chug along. The problem with ethanol is that we're not driving as much as we were pre-COVID. We've never really gotten back our unleaded gasoline usage back to where we were before. Now, it's gotten pretty close, but it's not expanding like it was. So expanding the blend, things like that, you know, the upside potential is a little bit difficult unless we're all going to go back to working from the office. But I think that culture has changed. I think that there's a lot of the work from home that's more acceptable, or hybrid, right, where people, you know, are in one day but out the other. And so, yeah, it's going to be tough to really expand that ethanol demand on an exponential basis without, you know, again, a new form of demand, i.e. sustainable aviation fuel.
Thinking ahead to short-term sales, Ted, over the next couple of months, where do you want producers to be pulling the trigger, or do you?
Yeah, you know, I say it a lot. You know, a lot of times the second highest peak of the year comes at the end of December or into early January. Unfortunately, this year we didn't have that seasonal rally into that time frame. So the concern now is that it's just lower from here, and then we have to hope for a weather rally at some point during the summer growing season. I really do think that you have to be fairly aggressive with your marketing, maybe more than you usually are. Yes, you can use reownership strategies. I am a proponent of that. You know, if it helps you make sales, right? You can do that. But yeah, you got to worry about where this is going. And again, banking on a weather issue somewhere, that's not a really good marketing plan, you know, because what if we don't? What if that second season Brazilian crop is good, and then we're headed into our growing season at some really uncomfortably low prices is my concern.
Lots to watch here as this year gets underway. We'll be back for more with Ted Seifert of Zaner Ag Hedge. Today's larger, heavier equipment can lead to more soil compaction issues. Firestone Ag IFVF tires with 82 technology maximize load capacity while minimizing soil compaction. Visit firestoneag.com to learn more. And we're back, talking markets with Ted Seifert, Chief Market Strategist at Zaner Ag Hedge. And Ted, you mentioned weather in Brazil is taking a turn for the better. The soybean market's been keeping a close eye on that. Fill us in a little bit. What are your concerns here with soybeans?
You know, it's concerning that we haven't had a rally in soybeans given the adverse weather that we've been seeing in Brazil, specifically Mato Grosso. Mato Grosso is the size of 6 Iowas. It is a huge area. And the losses there, I mean, there certainly are losses there. You've seen the expectations for this Brazilian soybean crop drop from mid-160s to mid to low 150s. But the problem is the market hasn't really reacted to that to the upside. We've not had a rally based on that. And I think that's based on the fact that your global end users, specifically the largest global end user in the world, China, hasn't shown any sort of sense of urgency. They've not come in and aggressively been buying on this. Which in their mind, or in my mind, says that they are either not worried that the Brazilian product isn't going to be there, or they just simply don't have the demand for it. I mean, you look at their hog market, and it is not, well, it's not rosy. So without the big influx of export sales coming in from China and then queued onto other countries, the market's just kind of not really gotten excited about it. You go back to our growing season, and we got excited 3 times about weather issues, and ultimately we ended up with a pretty decent crop. I think we're saying, you know, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right? So I don't know. And forecasters are really all over the places where they think, how they think we're going to end up. The Brazilian growing season is going to end up. It could go back to hot and dry. It could end up being too wet and have quality concerns. I don't think we're done with this weather market yet, Mike, but at least to this point, the market hasn't found that sense of urgency to need to see a rally.
All right, Ted. One place we have seen the market pulling back substantially is the wheat market. Saw a little pop in the mid-December, early December range. It's coming back. What's going on?
Yeah, every time we think that might be a low in the wheat market, it goes and proves us wrong. You got to always take that with a grain of salt. We had a double bottom, but then in the last couple of days, we've lost, you know, roughly 40 cents since the very end of last year, beginning of this year. And we've broken this bull flag scenario that we had unfolding on a chart. Now, I think the best thing we can hope for is an inverted head and shoulders bottom for the wheat market. But we've said that before, and it has not come to fruition. So I don't know what it's going to take, Mike, to get the wheat market up and going to the upside. But you look over the row crops, and I don't think you see any cues coming from that. Maybe at some point wheat can lead the row crops on a bit of a short covering rally, something like that. But every time you think wheat's about to do it, it sort of proves you wrong.
That's true, Ted. Well, as we begin this new year, we've got a lot of folks keeping an eye on the cattle market after that record 2023. We're down substantially from last year's prices. Where do we go from here?
You know, I think we really overshot the mark to the downside, right? And that can happen in markets that are fairly thinly traded, that have a big open interest that is based on funds or large speculators. And when they run for the door, they really go further than I think it needs to. Now I think we're sort of correcting back to what I would call fair value. I don't think the fundamentals have changed all that dramatically. I'm not saying that we need to go back and make new highs, but I think we should gravitate back towards those highs. And we have the seasonal tendency to be higher here at this point. While seasonals haven't really worked in the grain markets, they have been kind of working for the cattle complex. So I do feel like there is some upside potential here. Lots
to watch in the year ahead, Ted. As always, thank you for joining us and for sharing your expertise on This Week in Agribusiness.
Always my pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me.
It's Ted Seifert, Zaner Ag Hedge.
Greg Solier now brings us his farm weather forecast for the week ahead.
Yes, folks, a little bit of a change. We're going to turn now to the forecast with meteorologist Greg Solier. He's been watching the skies. And Greg, over the Pacific Northwest, I understand El Nino is having an impact. Can you fill us in?
Yeah, and basically that is the story for this season, this winter season. Not the usual typical setup. Areas farther south have been certainly impacted by weather. And much of the country as well, coming off an incredibly mild month of December, one of the top 10 warmest on record in many locales back across the Midwest. But things are changing, and we'll see that across the heartland as well here in the days and weeks to come. Onshore flow, one weather system here, another one moving into the Dakotas, a windy feature. Look at the very cold air for a change building across the southern Canadian prairie. Note the jet stream orientation here in from northwest to southeast, and this bitter, biting, bone-chilling air. These outbreaks so far into the winter season have been few and far between. Here it comes. And we're going to put snow cover down as well. Just about a week to 10 days ago, we had just about 20% of the country covered in snow. We haven't seen anything like that since back in 2012. And we know how the summertime played out after that. In any event, look at the parade of weather systems and organized snows we needed across the Cascades, northern sections of California, the Sierra, and will blanket much of the northern and central Rockies and the plains with snow and cold and bitter as well, livestock managers. And this will be a prolonged return to winter for a change across the northern plains and upper Midwest. We've had some incredible wave action across the central and southern sections of California with these El Nino driven storm systems. Here is one making its way across the plains. Some welcome moisture from snow and rain up through Nebraska to showers and thunderstorms into parts of West Texas, cotton, and plenty of wind in the desert southwest. We get in through the middle and late portions of the week. Another weather system, and again, a diving jet stream weather pattern. So that means cold air is locked in and infiltrating southward each time we get these little disturbances to move on through, we'll get another prod of Arctic air to build on southward and some organized snowfall as well, where it has been lacking much of the wintertime season. Nebraska, Kansas, farther south into the Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle country, wind through the desert southwest, and another weather system into the valleys of California, and probably some additional frost and freeze, Mike, into those southern valleys as the week wears on.
Greg, as I take a look at that western U.S. map, it looks like that cold air is going to move its way farther east. How cold and snowy is it going to be in the Corn Belt?
Boy, we've been spoiled rotten to the core here in this so-called winter season. We're going to make up for it, as they say, in the livestock side. And over at feedstuffs365.com, the other boot and hoof is dropping, and here it comes with one push of cold air. Here's this early week storm, by the way, fast moving on the nose of about a 200-mile-an-hour jet stream, laying out some snowfall and some significant rain across the Corn Belt. The much colder air continues to lock on in. The jet stream pattern in from Big Sky country down through the Missouri and swinging through the central Corn Belt. Another round, this time of organized snow throughout much of the Corn Belt. Sub-zero cold up to the north, and more of this to come here out of the Pacific Northwest and through the northern Rockies here in the days and weeks to come. We'll check it out on that 4-week forecast coming on up. Much colder air for the desert southwest. Organized moisture from showers and thunderstorms, heavy and severe, but it's drought relief into areas of the Delta. Wind and cold across sections of the southwest high plains and winter wheat belt. Here comes more cold for the plain states. Wind through the desert southwest. A new weather system on the nose of the jet. Showers and thunderstorms Gulf Coast. And look how far south, Mike, the rain snow line goes all the way to the Red River Valley of the south.
Well, what are we going to see all the way to the eastern seaboard, Greg?
Active weather pattern, more or less as it ought to be for January across the Corn Belt. Here's this dynamic, fast-moving, wind-blown storm. Front side has showers and thunderstorms. Backside, some fast accumulating snow for parts of the western through northern Corn Belt locales, and moisture in one form or another into some of those still waterlogged areas of the northeast and New England. Bitter cold up towards the Sioux and points on westward. That's the early vanguard. A new weather system as the cold air gets deeper across the Corn Belt. We'll put down some snow cover here and across areas of the northeast of New England, temporary drying with high pressure in control. Note the severe weather early in the week from the Delta onto the east with showers and thunderstorms moving in through Florida as well. Quiet weather pattern for now over some of the wetter areas of the Carolinas. Later in the week, another storm out of the southern plains heading through the Tennessee Valley. Showers and thunderstorms expected for the Gulf Coast area. Look how far south the polar jet stream is, but it's still west to east across the Gulf Coast with a rain and snow across Tennessee, wind and cold, and more moisture too for the southern plains.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Pentair Hypro, a global leader in innovative spray technology for farmers for over 75 years.
One thing that makes the agriculture industry unique is its use of volunteer boards throughout. You find them at co-ops and commodity organizations, opportunities for farmers to leave the farm and help lead massive organizations. It can be a challenge, and recently Max Armstrong caught up with Carrie Jacobs at the University of Missouri. She works with growers to make sure they're prepared for board work.
For the last 11, 12 years, my specialty has been really focused around agricultural cooperatives. Specific to that, board governance training, helping board members understand their role as it relates to planning, strategic planning. So I spent a lot of time with board members and full boards of agricultural cooperatives on board development, financial planning, strategic financial planning, those sorts of things.
These are folks who do not do this for a living. They earn their income in other ways, and many of them out on the land as farmers and ranchers. So you're arming them to be a little more astute in their management of the boards, and I bet it helps them back home in their agriculture operations.
We hope so. We like to think so. That's part of when we go through the training with them. We want them to understand that running your farm is different than running a cooperative. These are outstanding farmers. When they come into the boardroom, it can be sometimes challenging for them to understand how to translate what they know into running a multi-billion-dollar business in some cases. But if you talk to a long-standing director, they will tell you that having been a board member, after some time, they realize the benefit that has on their own operation. I think especially in terms of just lifting their vision a little bit, thinking more strategically, thinking more long-term, I think that translates to decisions on the farm.
What is the stereotypical, if you will, good cooperative board member? What are the qualities? What do they bring? What does she or he look like?
Ideally, I think you want someone who's interested in service. So some of these cooperative boards do receive some sort of stipend or pay, and I think that's appropriate to do that. No one is there for the money. I can promise you that this is not why they're there. But you want someone who's passionate about the cooperative. You want someone who's a lifelong learner. I think that's super important. You want someone who understands their leadership role. They need to be a leader, but not everyone in that boardroom, for example, is a leader as you'd expect a board chair to be, for example. So you want someone who's inquisitive, and just can provide that leadership and that sight, and also have a passion around what they do on their farm that can bring that into the boardroom.
Thank you, Max. Folks, don't let fear of the unknown dissuade you from participating in those boards. There's help out there. There's also help in generating more revenue for small farm operations. Lori Boyer recently explored an agrivoltaic setup in Colorado.
Now more than ever, farmers are having to think outside the box in order to stay in operation. And that is just what one farmer is doing here on the Front Range of Colorado. Hello everyone, I'm Lori Boyer, and I'm coming to you today from Jack's Solar Garden, which is located near Longmont, Colorado. As you see the solar panels behind me, today I'll tell you the story about how this farmer is not only using agritourism activity, but also agrivoltaics to keep his farm alive. In 1972, Jack Kumanak began raising hay and wheat on 24 acres in Boulder County, Colorado. After passing away and the farm not profiting for the last few years, Jack's grandson Byron made it home to Jack's Solar Garden. Byron got the idea from a friend who worked for a solar company and talked him into installing a solar array on his farm. After changing the land use code with Boulder County, and then after reaching out to research universities, he got response. And that is how he got into agrivoltaics. Today, he works with the University of Arizona and the National Renewable Energy Laboratory on growing crops and raising livestock under a solar array.
So our solar array at Jack's Solar Garden is a single axis tracking system. That means the panels follow the sun from east in the morning to flat at midday to west in the afternoon. And then at night they cycle back to flat, and then in the morning they go back to facing east. We know where the sun's going to be from now until eternity. So there's computer programs out there that know how to track the sun. We don't have to worry about there. I'm not outside with a screwdriver 20 times a day trying to adjust the panels. So the panels are just rotating on their own, producing electricity. That electricity gets funneled through our inverters towards our metering equipment, where Excel Energy and I have two different meters that we get to calculate how much power we produce over the course of a month. And then I have different clients that subscribe to maybe 1% up to 25% of our power. And then I let Excel Energy know that one client gets so much of my power. And then at the end of the month, it's net metered, and they attribute that electricity to that different client.
Put livestock under these panels and not just sheep.
Sure. A lot of solar companies are already putting sheep out in the solar array. So that is a checked box. People have figured that out and are comfortable with it. But there's lots of other animals that we all use. Turkeys, pigs, chickens, all of these animals could work within a solar array. And Colorado is a cattle state. I think we can put cattle within our solar arrays. We've had 3 red Angus cows underneath our panels just for a handful of hours, but we could see how they would work within the solar array. And for the most part, when you have good vegetation, all they care about is eating. They don't care about the structure or anything else. They can rub up against the steel, and I'm okay with that. But it's about having good vegetation there for them to eat.
He says the panels do not contain toxic materials, birds do not crash into them, contrary to popular belief, and the panels can be recycled. As for the agritourism side of Jack's Solar Garden, they have live bands, yoga, tours, photographers, and they host private events. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Lori Boyer.
Thank you, Lori. There is always something exciting happening on the High Plains. And folks, we'll have more on This Week in Agribusiness. Stick around.
Farm Progress Broadcast presents This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry. Brought to you by Case IH, solutions for every challenge, equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to This Week in Agribusiness. It's hard to believe, but the growing season will be here before you know it. Our friends at BASF are always thinking ahead to the next growing season, and recently, Max had a chance to sit down and talk to them about keeping those soy plants healthy across fields here in America.
Aubrey, what can growers do to better detect disease in their soybean fields?
Yeah, it's important to work with your local BASF representative to understand what is happening in your field. They can help you identify pathogens, scout for diseases, but also have a conversation of what's going on in your geography. So maybe you have more of a microscopic view of what's happening on your acre. But it's important for local grower communities to speak with each other to understand, okay, what's happening in my local area so that we can all have a community approach to disease management.
Well, share with me, what are the tools in your tool shed? What are the soybean fungicides BASF offers?
So BASF has 2 lead fungicide recommendations on the soybean acre. The first is Revitec. This is a fungicide that is comprised of 3 modes of action, a group 3, 7, and 11 fungicide. Revitec is for the grower who wants to get the most out of every acre, who's really looking to push that yield potential. Revitec not only helps mitigate and manage diseases, but it also helps crop mitigate and manage environmental and abiotic stresses such as excessive heat and drought. Second is Reviloc fungicide. Reviloc is formulated for heavy disease pressure environments that need a fungicide that is able to combat pathogens that have developed resistance to older chemistries. It's also formulated to be rain fast. This rain fast is necessary in environments where you have higher amounts of humidity and rainfall. And Reviloc also provides extended residual coverage in areas where you have heavy disease pressure and you really need to break that disease cycle early in the season, but also prevent secondary infections from coming in later in the season.
Are there benefits of using a soybean fungicide even if disease hasn't shown up in a field?
Yeah, so there are absolutely benefits to preventatively applying a fungicide. First and foremost is you never know how much disease pressure you're going to get going into a season, so you don't want to take that risk. Pathogens, fungal pathogens, have latent infections. That means that the amount of the pathogen presence in a plant is growing inside the plant. It's utilizing those resources before you even see the presence of that pathogen. So the approach of waiting till you spot and see disease and then applying the fungicide, it's too late. If you get an outbreak of disease, you can definitely stop that from progressing with a fungicide application. But ideally, you want to prevent that from happening before you occur that yield loss. But on top of that, fungicides allow the plant to focus on other things. So plant biology is a little bit different from human biology. Plant biology is more about resource allocation. And so if a plant has the ability to allocate resources to yield and growth optimization, then it will produce more yield at the end of the season. What the fungicide does is it manages the pathogen control aspects so that a plant can focus more of its resources on yield outputs.
So if I'm a grower who wants to be proactive in battling disease in my soybean fields, in short, what are you going to tell me?
I would tell you to preventatively apply BASF soybean fungicide at R2 to R3 timing, depending on the disease. And if you really want to understand optimum timing and the right product for you, speak to your local BASF representative.
Thank you, Max. And folks, you can see the full Plan Smart, Grow Smart series online. Visit the website at plansmartgrowsmart.com.
Greg Sodier is back now with his extended farm weather forecast for the nation.
Earlier in the program, Greg highlighted the weather that could be coming our way next week, and he mentioned some precipitation. Well, Greg, who's going to get what in this next week?
A little bit of everything for everyone. You may like it, you may not like it. And yeah, we have certainly been spoiled with a very uneventful weather pattern so far into the wintertime season. Some areas have had more rain than snow, and that snow cover and snowpack on average will be this week running along this purple area along into the north and northwest. Now, we can't rule out some freezing moisture as far south as northern Texas, outside the Metroplex into parts of the Tennessee Valley and Ohio Valley, but this will be a good water equivalency across much of the Midwest, Corn Belt locales into the eastern states as well. But again, some organized snows for a change across much of the heartland. Into we go to the Pacific Northwest, and they'll be in line for 1, 2, and perhaps even multiple inches of moisture into the Sierra and Cascades as well. So from coast to coast, Mike, a very busy and active weather pattern ahead for this week.
Well, Greg, looking ahead to temperatures mid-January, the week of January 15th, what do you expect to see?
A real shockaroo to the system. Look at this here, where it's been a split jet stream pattern, the polar jet roaring into northern California, into Dixie, swinging up through the Ohio Valley, and with snow cover now on the ground. This will be sub-zero, well below zero at night across the northern plains and upper Midwest, and a hint of mild air across the Gulf Coast, and a very active weather pattern into the Pacific Northwest. Organized snows there, probably down into the south end of winter wheat, swinging across much of the Corn Belt locales, probably multiple weather systems for the week. A little below average on snowfall here. Severe weather potential on the nose of the jet stream pattern here for the Tennessee Valley down across the Gulf Coast area. So we're making up for what we've missed out so far in the wintertime season.
All right, Greg, the week of January 22nd to the 28th, does that cold stick around?
It sticks around, and I think this is the story for the remainder of the wintertime season. The cold may ebb and flow, and told you here weeks gone by that this particular El Nino would not behave like your classic textbook scenario, and it's a weakening one at that. Look at the cold Pacific Northwest down to the Red River Valley of the South into the northeast of New England. Still this main lobe and mother lode across the southern Canadian prairie. Stratospheric warming means the rest of the atmosphere turns colder, and here's a piece of that polar vortex. And look at the storm track, Mike, still very active with multiple weather systems and a couple of storms for the plains across areas of the Corn Belt into the northeast and New England.
What do you see as we head into February, Greg?
Cold is trying to ease up somewhat, and here it is. It's kind of building and retrograding back northward. Some warmth across the Gulf Coast. Jet stream pattern is still generally west to east. We're not done with the cold nor the storm systems as well. They'll be active across the Pacific Northwest, the plains, upper Midwest into the northeast and New England.
Our Farm Progress Roundup is sponsored by Brandt Industries. Lead the field with Brandt's lineup of high-quality, high-capacity field grain belts and augers. Visit brandt.ca for more. This is a new segment, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be checking in weekly with the editors of Farm Progress publications about the stories and initiatives they're excited about. And this week, we're all very excited for the Farm Futures Business Summit. It kicks off next week, and joining me now to talk about it is Farm Progress Senior Executive Editor Mike Wilson. Mike, thanks for taking the time to join us.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
I am fantastic, Mike, and I'm excited to get to the Farm Futures Business Summit next week in Coralville, Iowa. This will be the 16th year the summit has happened. And Mike, why does Farm Futures put this on?
Well, it's a great question that we started asking ourselves all those many years ago, because we saw that there was so much training available for how to produce a crop, but nothing really out there about how to manage your business. And as you know, commercial scale farms are what we're all about in Farm Futures, and we need to always try to help our audience, our readers, learn to become better business people. And that entails so many things beyond just how to get a higher yield. It involves family transition planning, farm family, multi-generation basics about how to manage your business with your family, and labor, marketing, and so many other topics in between. So we saw that as an opportunity and a need where we could be of service.
Absolutely, and it has been very well received. 16 years running, farmers have been coming to the Business Summit. Mike, I understand the team made some changes for this next year's event in order to make it more engaging. Can you provide a little insight into what might be different if farmers are making it back this year?
Well, this is going to be a fantastic event, and I can't wait to see what's going to be happening next week at the summit. We're going to start off with something that we don't usually do, and that's something an inspirational, a motivational speaker, and who better but Olympic gold medalist from Iowa, Dan Gable. He'll be speaking Tuesday night, talking about his journey, what it takes to win, to succeed, and how to overcome potential problems and challenges. And who among us wouldn't learn something from that? We have challenges all the time in farming. So I'm sure that that's going to be a fantastic session. And then from there, we kick off with all sorts of different topics that and speakers that people have been talking about for years and years. You know, we do a lot of focus groups and summit surveys, and they tell us many of the same things. We need help learning how to be better marketers. We need help with labor management. We need help learning how to understand and treat our business, farm like a business. And these are all topics that are going to be front and center the full all day on Wednesday.
They certainly are. And I know, Mike, we're going to end Wednesday with a very fun comedian, Jerry Carroll. Is that still the plan?
That's another change that's been in play this year. As you mentioned earlier, Mike, we were very focused on the business aspect of a farmer's everyday business, but in the past, we were never really thinking too much about the inspiration, the fun, the entertainment. Then we're doing a lot more of that in this next summit. So we're really excited about that. We're happy to involve some. You know, we've always said, you know, work hard, play hard. Well, we're going to have some fun next week. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to be a little bit inspired. We're going to learn things, and we're going to have a laugh or two.
We certainly are, folks. Get it on your calendar. Tuesday, January 9th through Thursday, January 11th at the Hyatt Regency in Coralville, Iowa. It's the Farm Futures Business Summit. Mike Wilson, thanks so much for filling us in.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, where we spotlight another great American farm tractor. Well, as many of you know, a loader tractor can really take a beating sometimes. You can tell that it's had loader duty by looking at that front end. Not the case with this 544. It's been magnificently restored. An international tractor in Montana. Max's Tractor Shed is brought to you by Mystic Lubricants. We appreciate Mystic for their sponsorship of our segment the year round, but we really appreciate the way they keep farms and ranches operating all across North America. Mystic Lubricants are made to make it last. Well, Jeff Wellborn in southwest Montana is a busy man. He has a small farm there where he produces malt barley and alfalfa. He has a trailer dealership, and he's a member of the state legislature. He's been there for quite a few years. A state senator representing some 10,000 square miles of southwest Montana. Beautiful part of the state, right up there against the Bitterroot Mountains, as I recall. Well, take a look at this international tractor that he has. This 544 spent much of its working life in the Deer Lodge Valley of Montana, where it saw duty with the Con Warren cattle outfit. Conrad Warren helped develop the first local livestock markets in Montana. Jeff says he's owned this international for not quite 20 years, which I believe is almost the length of time he's served in the Montana State Legislature, where he's on the State Senate Ag and Livestock Committee these days. And of this beautiful 544, Jeff says it's all dressed for Sunday afternoons, but it's dependable enough to work all week long. An IH Diesel Hydro Row Crop 544 at Dillon, Montana. Mark Stock checks in every week at this time from Big Iron Auctions. Here's his report.
Well, hello, Max. The week of January 8th features some really nice Illinois farmland. 505 acres will sell in 9 tracts in Schuyler and Fulton County, Illinois, a land auction that will take place on Monday, January 8th at 10 o'clock a.m. Central Time. On Tuesday, January the 9th, 166 acres will sell in 2 tracts, land located in McDonough County, Illinois. On Tuesday, January the 9th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 80 acres will sell in Adams County, Illinois. On Friday, January the 12th, 287 acres sells in 4 tracts in McDonough County, Illinois. Our January 10th sale, we have some really nice items. Big Iron is known for selling late model combines, planters, and tractors, But we also have a lot of other equipment selling, like the 2022 Kuhn Knight Vertical Max VSL 250 mixer feeder wagon that is selling out of Hollyrod, Kansas. An auction in Atwood, Kansas for Hardin Brothers features some classic John Deere tractors. Construction-related equipment includes the 2021 John Deere 325G compact track loader selling in Holdridge, Nebraska. Go to SullivanAuctioneers.com and BigIron.com for all of next week's auction information.
Our FFA Chapter Tribute is brought to you by Pioneer, developing new generations of seed innovations for new generations of farmers. Pioneer, what's next happens here. Now it's time to meet that next generation of agricultural leader, and this week we're talking with Jawan Sloan. He serves as the Northwest District Vice President for the Arkansas State FFA. Jawan, thanks for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start at the beginning. Jawan, what made you want to be a part of FFA?
Awesome. So I was going to one of my next classes during my 8th grade year, and some of my friends came to me and asked me if I wanted to join one of their career development events, which was judging livestock. And I had no idea about any of that. So I just said, yeah, sure. If y'all are doing it, I'll do it with you. And so that kind of just got my start in FFA. And from there, I just kept participating and going to different events, and I fell in love with the organization.
And I understand you've taken the chance to seize some leadership opportunities. What is it about leadership in FFA that has you excited, Jawan?
Yes, sir. So I feel that I've always had the passion to serve others, and being known that FFA has millions of leadership opportunities, I took part in that, and just seeing how my leadership can make an impact on those around me is something that I always look forward to and look up to. So just having that impact on others is very, very important to me.
It is so crucial. And Jawan, how many students or how many chapters are you working with in the Northwest District?
So we will begin traveling as state officers more so in the spring semester, but the Northwest District is more of one of our largest districts in the state. So I've not yet worked with many chapters just yet on personal visits, but that is to come here in the spring semester.
Fantastic. Jawan, in long term, do your future plans involve staying in agriculture?
Yes, sir. So I plan to continue to be in agriculture as by being a ag teacher and FFA advisor somewhere here in the great state of Arkansas.
Fantastic. We wish you the best of luck. That's Jawan Sloan, Northwest District Vice President for Arkansas State FFA. Colby Egg Tech is brought to you by Copperhead Ag Products. Visit copperheadag.com for more information. Our traveling tech expert, Chad Colby, has been on the road recently, and he had the chance to go to California. While there, he talked with rancher Martin Hine of the Hine Ranch outside Bakersfield, California, about his recent acquisition of an electric tractor.
We've been looking at the electric tractors. We've used the ATVs. We use some of the pruning equipment around the farm. In California, we've had some incentives. There's some grants that have been offered to us to incentivize us to start to purchase and maybe bring some of this equipment and get it into the field. And
so one of the things you and I were talking about with these, I had a chance to drive one, is there's some potential new things here too, is in automation. There's a lot of connectivity to this tractor. It's a little bit more than just a 75 horse little conventional tractor. Talk a little bit about what that means for the farm here.
Well, in California, when temperatures get extreme in the summertime, we've got heat issues with employees, especially without an air conditioner on these. We've got some opportunities to maybe operate these during hot times during the day, and or when our employees have worked more than a 40-hour work week, we can still potentially take this equipment back into the field and run it autonomously. It'll actually run operatorless.
You know, it's pretty neat when you drive it. It's super quiet. I mean, certainly there's going to be some advantage to electric. What are any of the challenges that you guys have faced so far? Operationally, do the guys like using it? I mean, you got a lot of tractors around here. Anything on that side?
I think we're still up in the air. We've got about 150 hours on these, and the employees are getting used to change. We're getting what the manufacturers have said that we would get a full day's work. They say 14, maybe 16 hours, and we're able to operate these 9-10 hours a day and still have 38% of the battery left in them.
Thank you, Chad. I think we'll be getting some more reviews over the next couple of years as those electric tractors push further into production agriculture. Leave it here. We'll have more This Week in Agribusiness when we come back. Well, folks, this past week I had the opportunity to travel to Boise, Idaho to work with the folks who attended the Idaho Farm and Ranch Conference, and I tell you what, it was fantastic. As we are at the beginning of a new year, I know a lot of folks are making their New Year's resolutions, and I've got a challenge to all of you. Resolve to get together with your peers in the industry. There are a number of great opportunities over the next 2 or 3 months to get together, commune in person with other farmers and folks in the ag industry. I'm blessed to get the chance to travel quite a bit and visit some of these farm meetings. And over the next month, I'm going to be visiting with folks in Menominee, Wisconsin. I'll be traveling potentially to the cattle convention happening at the end of the month. And then next month, things are really going to start to gear up. I'm excited to be working with Illinois Farm Bureau and Country Financial on a series of meetings happening across the state of Illinois in mid-February called That Can't Happen to Me. We're going to dive into some of the problems that can happen on a farm. In my life, I've suffered through a death and a divorce on the farm. Both times changed my life pretty meaningfully. We're going to talk about some of those issues and how farmers can better prepare for some of the challenges that this industry throws at us. Get out those calendars, folks. Figure out where you can find a meeting that appeals to you. Get out there. Get connected. We're a great industry full of great folks. You deserve to get to know them. That's it for this week. Join us next time. Same place, same time, right here for This Week in Agribusiness.
This Week in Agribusiness has been brought to you by Case IH. Solutions for every challenge. Equipment for every farm. Case IH, built by farmers. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by 22 Creative Group and has been a presentation of Farm Progress Broadcast. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.